Hi, my name is Gitika Gorthi, and I am part of the Youth Advisory Board with the Children's Science Center. I am a junior attending Chantilly High School in Fairfax County, and I'm here today to introduce you to Dr. Carla Easter, who has joined us for our STEM Champion video series. Dr. Easter is Deputy Chief for Education and Community Involvement at the National Human Genome Research Institute. Dr. Easter has earned her bachelor's degree in microbiology and her doctoral in biology with an emphasis on molecular genetics from the University of California. She played a major role in the development of the Smithsonian exhibition Genome, Unlocking Life's Code, and its accompanying website, and serves as a liaison to the K-12 and university community as a speaker on genomic science and career preparation and pathways. Dr. Easter has been an adjunct faculty member in the Department of Biology, Chemistry, and Physics at the University of the District of Columbia, and a research instructor in genetics at Washington University School of Medicine. The STEM Champion video series highlights the diverse STEM community and the journey STEM champions have taken, allowing children and young adults to see what is achievable. During our conversation, Dr. Easter will discuss her background and career, as well as insights on the future of the National Human Genome Research Project. Welcome, Dr. Easter.
Thank you, Gitika. It's wonderful to be here with you.
Thank you so much for coming and taking your time to be here with us today. So my first question is, I read about you and I found out you have such an interesting and impactful career on understanding human life. And I really want to understand your journey in that. But before that, I would like to know more about your role as the Chief of the Education and Community Involvement Branch at the National Human Genome Research Institute.
Sure. So I'll start by just sort of giving you a little context. So the National Human Genome Research Institute is one of the 27 institutes and centers at the National Institutes of Health. And the National Institutes of Health is really the largest granting agency in terms of biomedical research in not only, I would say, in the US, but also around the world. And so we support a number of research projects. In addition, we house on the main campus in Bethesda one of the largest clinical centers dedicated to biomedical research as well. And so the Human Genome Research Institute is one of the institutes that really got its start with the Human Genome Project. Which started back in, early in the 1990s, and then completed around, again, the early 2000s and 2003. And so it really has been our goal to continue to support the wonderful technologies and advances that have happened through the Human Genome Project, but also to expand the field of genomics. And I'm very lucky to be in charge of a branch that focuses its efforts on making the public aware of the wonderful things that the Human Genome Project taught us, but also some of the advances that we couldn't have even thought about when we first sequenced the human genome. But then I think one of the coolest things about my job is working with young trainees, specifically students, to make them aware of the vast amount of opportunities that exist in the field of genomics. I always like to tease the students that when I was their age, none of these jobs were thought about, right? Genomics wasn't even something that I learned about as an undergraduate or a graduate student. And so it's really amazing to me to think about a number of opportunities. And so my branch really is dedicated to providing the access to those opportunities for students, as well as making the public aware. In addition, we focus on supporting healthcare providers and their education around genetics and genomics. Again, if you think about folks that went to medical school or nursing school or pharmacy school, 20 years ago, we were just at the point where we were really understanding the Human Genome Project. And so those are individuals who are very much immersed in the field of medicine, but may not have had the opportunity to become intimately familiar with genetics and genomics. And so that's one of the other goals of my branch, is to give them, again, the opportunity to be exposed to this and to then leverage that exposure to better treat patients.
Wow, that seems so amazing. I think it's really important that we do spread whatever science or STEM topic, to everyone, because a lot of people aren't even aware that they can take a career or pursue a career in this, which is just amazing.
Exactly.
Yeah, and here at the YAB, we also try to reach out to a broad audience, and we're trying to also reach out to students who may not even know that they can actually do so much even at like 13. So how do you like reach out to such a large audience, or like different students?
So I would definitely say that really the best way to do that is to form partnerships. Anything successful begins with relationships that you build. And especially when you think about reaching out and engagement with communities, we spend a lot of time building those relationships with our partners. And not just in the sense of, here's something that we have, here, take it and do something. No, here's something that we have. Do you think it will work for you? And if it doesn't work, what can we do to make it better? So a lot of our efforts are based upon those relationships and the recognition that truly collaboration and partnerships are what's going to make you successful. And so, because to do it ourselves, I don't have a very large branch. We couldn't reach all the people. But to give you an example, one of the projects I'm involved in is a short course where we bring faculty from community colleges, high schools, and middle schools to the NIH. And, when you think about it, I could bring 30 educators, and each one of those individuals will probably see hundreds of students. And I can do far more reaching one of those faculty members and in turn reaching all of their students than if I try to, reach 100,000 students every year. So again, it's really thinking about how do you build those relationships and how do you partner with people to make those kinds of engagements work.
Yeah, and so I'm assuming your daily job is to just kind of go out to your community, host events rather than just doing a bunch of stuff on your computer.
Exactly. We have all sorts of, COVID has really sort of changed how we reach. But on the other hand, we found different ways, whether it's doing virtual platforms like Zoom, or in some cases, we've spent some time even publishing papers, recognizing that if we can get our work in journals where people can read them, that's another way to disseminate this. We've also become, well, I haven't become good at it. My branch has become very good at social media. And so that's another place where we found that this time has given us the opportunity to really look critically at how we were reaching particular communities and what we could do better, given the fact that we don't have this personal interaction anymore.
Yeah, same thing. We've actually been trying to be more active on platforms like Facebook or like Twitter, just to get more of the young audience and like get them into it. Yeah, definitely. And also, apart from your job, I was reading a little bit about your PhD research, and I found that very interesting. I just wanted to learn more about it. Could you describe your project more?
Sure. So I have to say I had one of the coolest PhD research projects in the world. So I came to my graduate career coming out of UCLA as a microbiologist. And I loved working with microbes. And so my project really focused on, within bacteria, you have, not in all strains, but in many strains, these little independently replicating entities called plasmids. And most students might think about plasmids because it's what you use when you're doing any sort of cloning. And then you might take a piece of the bacterial plasmid, you put your DNA into it, then you put it into the bacteria, and voila, you get, some cool activity like glowing bacteria, or, bacteria that do something they didn't do before. So my project focused on the fact that for some of these plasmids, they carry with them antibiotic resistance. And not only do they carry it on them, but they can transfer themselves, or basically through a method called conjugation, they basically can transfer those plasmids from bacteria that have them to ones that don't have them. So if you can imagine in your gut where bacteria are quite abundant and close together, if you have one bacteria that has a plasmid, there is the capacity for it to transfer that plasmid and then also transfer this drug resistance. But what we also found is not only the ability to transfer them as a way, as a mechanism to keep them within the population, they also have evolved systems that will basically make it nearly impossible for the bacteria to lose them. So you have to imagine that these plasmids are quite large, and they are, pretty much an energy drain on the bacteria to keep them. And so the question was, why would a bacteria keep a plasmid even if it didn't need it? And what we discovered is that these bacteria have stabilizing systems that allow them to be maintained within the bacteria even if they're not using them. And in fact, if the bacteria lose them, there is a process by which there is a toxin that is made by the plasmid. When the bacteria loses the plasmid, the antitoxin, which is also made by the plasmid, the antitoxin degrades much faster than the toxin, and you actually end up killing the bacteria. So it's really kind of fascinating when you think about how these bacteria have evolved these amazing systems. And again, I think people are starting, I mean, I knew how amazing they were, but I think with CRISPR-Cas9 being discovered in bacteria, people are really figuring out how amazing they are. So yeah, I had a really cool project.
Yeah, I think biotechnology in general is just very cool, like manipulating, different parts in our body. It's just crazy. And so is this the kind of the same concept? So, when they say like antibiotics are no longer, or like your body's no longer can resist to a certain treatment?
Exactly. So this is one of the mechanisms in which you have bacteria that develop resistance. So, right, you can have a particular disease and try to give an individual, try to take a particular antibiotic, and your bacteria just are immune to it. And again, it's because they have these resistances that they've basically acquired. And again, we have to think about bacteria are trying to survive just like we are. So it's that constant race between who can keep one step ahead of the other.
Yeah, that's very fascinating. It's just like us. We always constantly evolve, and so do they.
Yes.
So did you get into genetics as a child? Were like really interested in it, or is it something that developed as you were studying in high school or college?
Yeah, I mean, I think very early on, in an early age, I really was interested in genetics. Probably in middle and early high school. Really, middle school is probably where I started to really think about a career in science. My father is an engineer, and my mother was a nurse. They're both retired now, but she is a nurse. And, I spent a lot of time as a candy striper. And so I had been around, excuse me, had been around the medical field for much of my life. And so I think through high school, I really did think I was going to go to medical school. And I was one of the very lucky people that in my high school, we had a phenomenal science class, excuse me, science department. And our science department offered microbiology and genetics. And so that was my early opportunity to learn about genetics. And I was just totally blown away by it. And it really, that desire to learn more about, what it is that makes not only us humans, but what connects us to other organisms, especially through genetics, was always something I was totally excited by. And so it just seemed to be a natural fit that when I went to college, that I carried that desire to study, microbes, but also really thinking about how genetics could play a role. And as I said, I had early on wanted to be a pediatrician. But when I got to college, I was really excited by research and thought, yeah, I think research is a place for me rather than being a clinician.
Yeah, I think it all like circles back to the main idea that like awareness gives you ideas, and people, if they have awareness of amazing science and like different topics they can study, it, it always circles back to awareness.
Most certainly.
Yeah.
Most certainly.
When you were trying to get into genetics, knowing that it was very interesting, did you have, when trying to like switch from pediatrics to genetics, have any like obstacles or?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I think my switch really came probably my third year of college, because I ended up working at the UCLA Medical Center, and my mentor was a pediatric transplant a physician, and she was amazing, absolutely amazing. I owe so much of who I am professionally and scientifically to Dr. McDermott, because she was amazing. But it was really the opportunity to work with her on the work that she was doing with transplant patients that really made me realize that, it takes a really special person to be a clinician. And I think for me, the fact that I was working in a field where we were studying children that were so very sick, that it really dawned on me that this was not a field that I just did not think I had I just didn't have the personality to do this, right? I just, working with children who, you would do the experiments and you knew how very ill these children were, and that the work that you were doing could save their lives, or in some cases you might be too late to do that, was just really hard for me. And so I think after spending time working with her at the medical center, I really thought I wanted to be that person who was more behind the scenes, who could develop those treatments and provide the foundation for those cures, but to administer those cures was really not for me. And it goes back to just what you said, Gitika, the exposure, right? If I had never had that exposure, I would not have known that that really was not my calling. And to have that opportunity, as sad as it was, and the realization that what I had thought I was going to do was really not what I was going to do, I'm very grateful for that, because I think I would not be as happy as I am now if I had gone down a road that just really was just not the right path for me.
Yeah, I think you're lucky to have changed, knowing, and you weren't scared to kind of go a different direction. Like, what advice would you give to young people or even college students who are kind of like, I don't know if this is for me,
Yeah, I mean, again, I think you have to follow your gut, because the reality is that you can always go back, right? I mean, I could always have done a PhD and applied to medical school. There is nothing that said I could not be a physician at some point. It just, at that moment in time, it wasn't right for me. So I think oftentimes we get so tied to what we think we should do. And we also sometimes have to step back and ask ourselves, is it what I want to do, or is it what someone else wants me to do? Or have I just been saying this for so long that I just don't know that there's any other opportunities? So I guess my advice would be for anyone to, given opportunities, take it, right? Don't, just eat. You don't have to do it, right? Life is all about making changes and pivoting, and you don't have to be tied to it. Just because you've been saying you'll do it since 6th grade, it's okay to change. Nobody will be mad at you if you change. But the thing is that you will be so much happier and so much more successful if you follow the thing that you really do feel passionately about.
Yes, I 100% agree. I remember from kindergarten to now, my careers have changed like 6
Oh,
times.
yeah. Of course. And again, the world is changing. And it's like I said, jobs that existed, some jobs that existed 10 years ago have changed so much. And then there are jobs that didn't exist 10 years ago that people are looking at. Who knew that being a Zoom technician would be a job, back
Yeah.
in, 2000, right? We never knew any of this. Who knew what Amazon was? We had no idea about these things. And that, we would be in this information age where so much data is so much important. These jobs are just things that we could not have thought about, 20 years ago.
Yeah, and I feel like that brings us to like this wrapping question is like, what excites you about the future of your industry? Because everything is rapidly changing all the
Yeah.
time.
I really think what excites me is, so with genomics, and just to give a little background, the Human Genome Project was about deciphering the genetic makeup of humans. So deciphering and finding out the order of the individual nucleotide bases, the A, T, C's, and G's. And so, from the Human Genome Project, we got a whole lot of information, but we also, were able to rapidly, sequence, right? To figure these things out. We went from taking 13 years for one genome to now being able to sequence human genomes in, a day and a half.
Wow.
Right? It cost us like $3 billion for the first genome. Now we can do it for about $1,000 to $1,500, right? So that is amazing.
Amazing.
To me, what excites me is the data that we're gathering from this, right? So you can do the sequencing really quickly, but the real question is, what do we do with the data? What do we do once we get this information? And I think what excites me about it is the ability for, so many people to have access and to make really empowered decisions about having their own data. But I also think that we're opening up this world for conversations about how do we use this information. So this information is no longer just in the hands of scientists. We have people who are thinking about the ethics of this. The people who are considering the privacy of one's data. We're thinking about people who are going to have jobs and really understanding this data. So I think, to me, the exciting part about this is, what are we going to do with this information? And we've opened up a field that is so broad, that is including so many people from so many different places. Also, we're opening up the field so that it doesn't mean that you have to be in Bethesda to do this work, right? You can be in some place like, rural California, and you can still access this data and be productive and contribute. So I'm really excited about where this is all going, and the fact that we are really, to use the word, democratizing science in many ways. The fact that so many people have access to this, but so many people are being able to leverage it and use it, and in ways that are not just individually bettering themselves, but whole communities. So that's what really gets me excited.
Yeah, and hearing that, it just kind of like lit like a light bulb. I was reading, once you understand more about like our DNA and kind of like different parts, you can like really see what parts need to be changed to address certain like diseases that we're facing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I feel like that opens a huge door.
Right. And in the same vein, you have people who are really now asking the question, should we do that? Right? So not only can we do it, but should we do it? So we are really, now these conversations are so much more in the forefront, so that now all people can have access to making those decisions. So it's not as if certain people are only talking about it. Now everybody can talk about it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Just like thinking about the future and like how many different discussions there will be. It'll be like, it's a very huge area of study that I'm very excited to see where it goes. I learned so much from today's conversation about our scientific community, and especially like your PhD research. That was so interesting. And I cannot thank you enough for being here today and sharing your journey and your story with the rest of us. I could go all day talking to you about but I think that so far through our conversation, I've learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone who's watching has learned a lot. And I want to, respect your time. And so I want to thank you so much for coming today. I know the Youth Advisory Board really appreciates your commitment to making a change and being part of this STEM Champion Series. Hopefully today, those who are watching understood that science is for all, and it's very broad and constantly changing. And we can all, make a huge difference together.
Yes,
Thank
yes.
you.
Well, thank you, Gitika. It was an absolute pleasure. You have been the highlight of my day. So thank you so much for inviting me. And as you said, science is for all, and we should all recognize that and take that truly to heart. So thank you.
Thank you.